Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Santa Barbara County Planning Commission meeting of the 7th of December, 2016. We have a little debate as to whether it's 9 o'clock, but down here it's getting close. So let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have divided our planning commission into two this morning. Mr. Villalobos will call the roll and give us the TV announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning Commission hearings are televised live on County and Santa Barbara Television, CSB TV Channel 20 at 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, Santa Maria Valley, Santa Maria and Orchid areas. Rebroadcasts of Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays at 5 p.m. on CSB TV Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on CSB TV's website and will be available for download in a day or two. Now for the roll call, Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Brooks.
Here.
Commissioner Farini.
Here.
Commissioner Blau.
Here.
And Chair Cooney.
I am here. Thank you very much, Mr. Villalobos. And Ms. Black, good morning to you. You have a couple of things for us.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This morning we have two items on your agenda, and as the agenda indicates, we are recommending that the first item, the Brown appeal of the Meniscalo grading permit, be continued to next week. The appellant wasn't able to make the hearing today, and the applicant was in agreement with that continuance. So when we get to that item, we'll be recommending that you continue it. And then we're ready to move forward on the McClellan equestrian facility. In terms of the projection report, we do have a hearing next week. It'll be our last hearing of the year. It's in Santa Maria, and we have two items on the appeal that I just mentioned, and the Hilt Winery project is on that day as well. Our first meeting in January will be January 11th, and that will also be a Santa Maria hearing, and we have two items on that day. The Vintage Ranch subdivision, which is Key Site 7 in Orchid, and the Lompoc Stone vesting determination. Moving on, our next hearing in January will be January 25th, and that'll be in Santa Barbara, and we have a couple of items on that day. We do not have anything yet projected for February 1st, but we'll keep an eye on that and see if we need it or not. February 8th is a Santa Maria hearing again, and we have a couple small items on that day, and we've noted that Commissioner Brown is not going to be here that day. February 20th, I think I'm not going to go too much further.
No need, I don't think. Are there questions from commissioners or comments about the projection report? Anything? Commissioner Brown.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say is I normally when I travel, I try to do it when the commission doesn't meet, but unfortunately for the early part of the year, the trips I was planning were days that they were hearings, so I apologize for that, but normally I try to avoid them entirely. So I appreciate your indulgence in realizing that it's great to get out of town occasionally. Thank you.
Anything else? Not seeing or hearing from anyone. We will now call for public comment. This is the opportunity for members of the public to bring to our attention matters not on today's agenda. And we do have one public comment request slip from Monty Cole. Mr. Cole.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners, and thanks for the time. Thank you, Mr. Villalobos, for setting this up. I'm Monty Cole, a builder, designer, and patented inventor out of Montecito, and I'm here to briefly say hello and bring my little project to your attention. I'm trying to propose that we begin installing devices that capture flood water, runoff from creeks, store that water in cisterns, and then release it after the flood events, and also use it for watering, irrigating county parks. And so the design, such design that I put together for Cold Springs Creek, which comes down into Montecito. And the numbers are all there. There's a lot of technical information, but the basic plan is to capture water out of the stream at the crossing. So there would be no disruption of the creek, no pipes put under the creek, and no tearing up of the creek. And still, we will need Army Corps and Fish and Wildlife permits, but I decided bring this to your attention. I have many other designs on my website for other creeks and other locations in the county, but there's a great deal of water. I'm predicting we could get 400 acre-feet out of Cold Springs, tapping only about 10 or 15% of its water flow. So there's an incredible amount of water coming out of there when it rains. And you know, obviously it doesn't work if it doesn't rain, but throughout the year you get at least 5 months of rain areas. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. Any questions? I'd be happy to say anything more about it, but it's a start. We've had some traction from Supervisor Carbajal, who's introduced this to the county flood people, and we're kind of moving forward looking at it. There is $200 million in fish grants using that water to help fish habitats downstream, and there's also $8 billion in state grants for water retention projects like this. So the money is there. The time is 1.5 years sometimes to get it, so the sooner we start applying for that, and only the city or county can apply for these grants, but the money is there, sitting and waiting. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for for doing so. Very interesting and innovative. We'll look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Is there any other public comment? Not seeing anyone here in Santa Barbara. Is there anyone for public comment in Santa Maria? Commissioner Farini?
No, no one here.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll turn to Planning Commissioner informational reports. Commissioner Brooks has a report.
Yes, it's not a report, it's probably more of a request. As I was reading through the staff report for today's item, the equestrian facility, I noticed that the mitigated negative deck, was available for review in the central branch of the libraries. And I think it's been policy that staff will put the reports at the main branches. And I'm just going to make a request because I know in the past I have asked for some reports to be at some of the branch libraries, like the Vandenberg Village. If it's a Vandenberg Village item or unincorporated area, if we could get a report in the branch, having this report probably over at the Buellton Library or the Solvang branch, so that if there is a closer location to the impacted area, that the reports be forwarded. They could be forwarded by way of the main branches, but it would be great if they would be out in the local branch libraries. Just a request. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. Anyone else? Okay, then we will move to the minutes. We have a short set of minutes from our previous hearing of November 9. Commissioner Brown.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve as submitted the minutes of November 9, 2016. Is there any discussion? All those we have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeney,
Aye.
Commissioner Blau,
Aye.
and Chair Cooney.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the director's report, and Dr. Russell, good to see you.
Good to see you. Good morning, Commissioners. Since your meeting on the 9th, there were 3 board hearings on the 15th, the 22nd, and the 6th. I'd like to report on some items from the 22nd and the 6th. On the 22nd, the Myers appeal was on the. There really wasn't much to report on from the 15th. On the 22nd, the Myers appeal was heard, and we received a letter from Carpinteria Fire the night before the hearing that suggested that there was benefit to this secondary access if the primary access for some reason could become blocked. And so because of that, we had prepared findings for denial of the appeal, but because of that, we were directed to go back and do full environmental review on the project and bring back findings both for approval and denial. So that will take some time, so I don't know exactly when that's going to go back, but that was the direction that we received. The other item on that hearing was the winery ordinance, and the board took no action on the winery ordinance. So that leaves it somewhat open should the new board wish to do something, which is an unknown at this time. They might revisit that in the future. So at this point, really all we can say is that no action was taken on the winery ordinance. Yesterday, the 6th, there were a couple items. The Signorelli appeal was continued. Mr. Signorelli had some family issues, and so it has been continued to January 24th. And then the other item of interest from Planning and Development was the short-term rental ordinance. And the board decided not to accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission, but instead asked us to do some research and come back next year and present the results of that research, and then we would perhaps get some new additional direction or not from the board as to where they might like to see it go. And the items, there were quite a number of items, and the items that they said they would like to know more about include possible permit path for homestays and farm stays, the possibility of creating overlays for areas in which STRs are allowed. They wanted to know what the Coastal Commission has asked for with regard to STRs in other jurisdictions. They wanted some more detailed information about specific zones and geographical locations where STRs are in fact currently located. They wanted to know how many STRs are owner-occupied, that might relate to the homestays and farm stays. How many second dwelling units are being used as STRs? They would like some more specific information regarding zoning enforcement, how much additional staff and cost would be associated with enforcing STR regulations. They wanted us to provide some development standards for should we decide to regulate STRs, things like proof of insurance coverage, APAC review of STRs on contracted land, and others. Provide information regarding how other jurisdictions regulate STRs, and confer with the tax collector to see how the application for the TOT certificate might capture other relevant information that would be useful for us to know in the regulation of STRs if they would like to go that. There was some question about historic vacancy rates in Santa Barbara and whether there's any information as to whether STRs are objectively affecting that. What would the second unit question also, what impact might that have, sort of a related question. And some more information on actual rental rates of STRs, specifically but not limited to the coastal zone. There was some discussion as to whether there really are affordable STRs in the coastal zone, and conflicting information was presented as to whether or not they are actually affordable in the coastal zone, and so they asked for some more coherent information about that. So we'll be going back sometime in the new year, maybe March, we haven't picked a date yet, to present all this research and then see whether or not this is something they want to add to our work program. So that's what I currently have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was.
Thanks. Other questions from commissioners of Dr. Russell? Well, I might just add a question, Dr. Russell, from the portion of the hearing that I listened to, which I thought was the very end, but turned out to be sort of the middle when the supervisors started expressing their viewpoints. And a question came up at one point as to whether, given the depth and breadth of the additional information being requested, should this go back to the Planning Commission before it comes back to the board? But I didn't hear that developed any further, and I didn't know if staff had a chance or was planning to consider if that's an appropriate procedure. Some of the information developed would be in addition to what the Planning Commission had before it. Other pieces we may have looked at that they didn't have at the board, or at least those members of the board that expressed they wanted to hear more about it, didn't have the benefit of the record we had.
So, Mr. Chair, I think it's impossible to answer that question right now. I think that there was rather a broad number of issues that were considered by the Planning Commission, and depending upon what they want us to actually do, then I think the decision would be made at that point. And I don't think that it is necessarily, yes, the Planning Commission considered that, so you don't go back, or no, the Planning Commission didn't consider that, so you must go back. They may very well say, well, even though they considered it, we would like the advice of the Planning Commission, so you need to go back. So we'll just have to see. I'd say the chances are fair, but it's, I'm speculating.
Well, I'm not necessarily requesting that be considered, but if all of the information is developed in time to go to the board at some point in the spring, it may beg the question. There's no need to go back to the Planning Commission if everything's been developed. If, on the other hand, the board develops that option as a way of providing a more presentable decision so they can spend less time on it, then perhaps that could be expressed earlier before all the information is developed for their benefit. But we're glad to wait and see how staff recommends we go forward. Any other questions or comments? Nothing from the north? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to see you later. That brings us to our standard agenda. Let's read item 1 into the record, please.
The following is a hearing on the request of Sandra Brown, appellant, to consider case number 16 APL2, appeal filed on January 4, 2015, of the director's decision to approve case number 15 LUP 512, and to determine the case is exempt from the provisions of CEQA pursuant to section 15303 of the state guidelines for implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Are there any commissioners with ex parte reports on this matter before we take action? Not seeing any. All right. Is there a motion then to?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I received a phone call from Ms. Jameson, but she called me the day I got my packet, and I didn't have a chance to read it yet, so other than just having a nice little chat with her about her interest in...
You're on item 2. Item 2. No, it's okay.
Mr. Chair, before you vote on this, if you could just ask if there's any public comment.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on item 1, the Maniscalco grading appeal?
No speakers in the north.
Thank you, Commissioner Farini. Nothing in the north, and it doesn't look like we have anyone here. So I think we're ready for the motion. Commissioner Brooks.
Yes, thank you. I will move that we continue the Brown appeal to next week's hearing, as staff recommends.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Farini. A roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Brown. Aye. Commissioner Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Farini.
Aye.
Commissioner Blau.
Aye.
And Chair Cooney.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. We'll just move right on to item 2. If you will start us off. please, Mr. Villalobos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The following is a hearing on the request of Joe Jameson, agent, to consider case number 16 CUP4, application filed on January 12th, 2016, and to adopt the mitigated negative declaration 16 NGD 18 pursuant to the state guidelines for implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act.
All right, Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. I'm rusty after being off a month. Proves the value of hearings. I did have ex parte with Ms. Jameson, as I previously indicated. She called the day I got my packet and hadn't even opened my box, so other than a nice greeting and welcome, I've had no other ex parte nor site visit. Thank you.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cooney. I did have a site visit. I was invited by Ms. Jameson, and when I arrived at the site, Ms. McClellan was there also, and I spent probably half hour, 45 minutes there. I got a good sense of the lay of the land. Thank you.
Anything?
Chair Cooney.
Yes, Commissioner Freeney.
Yes, and I did speak with Ms. Jameson yesterday, briefly.
Okay. I also had a call from Ms. Jameson, and it was early in the study, and I did not have questions as I read through the staff report, so we just had that initial conversation. So I think we're ready to turn to Ms. Edie. Thank you very much.
Good morning. So the conditional use permit that you have before you this morning is to legalize an existing equestrian facility and also to allow for the construction of 2 new barns as well as an agricultural employee dwelling. The project site is located at 2035 Edison Street. It's within the San Ynez Valley Community Plan area, and it's approximately 550 feet east of Highway 154. The 10.05 acre parcel is an interior lot, and it's accessed by an existing driveway off of Edison Street. The parcel is zoned Ag 110, and it's surrounded by other parcels that are also zoned Ag 110, and they're developed with agricultural, equestrian, and low-intensity residential uses. In this slide, I'm going to go over the existing development and uses that are on the project site. So the existing development includes a 1,944 square foot horse barn, and here's a photo of it, a riding arena, a detached residential second unit that's 720 square feet. Paddocks are in this area of the site, and these are some photos of the existing paddocks. There's a pasture area on the western portion of the property, as well as a garden and orchard, and an existing 2,500 square foot main residence. In August of 2015, Planning and Development received a complaint regarding the operation of an unpermitted equestrian facility on the parcel. A notice of violation was issued in September of that year that confirmed the violation. And upon receiving the NOV, the applicant applied for a pre-application in November to determine the appropriate permitting path and submittal requirements. And then on February 12th of this year, the subject CUP application was submitted. The proposed project is for a CUP to legalize the existing equestrian facility, and that consists of approximately 5,164 square feet of existing development. And then in addition, the applicant is proposing to construct a new 800 square foot agricultural barn that would be used to store hay, a 931 square foot horse barn, and a 1,600 square foot agricultural employee dwelling. Commercial horse boarding for a maximum of 21 horses, which is consistent with the number of horses that would be allowed on a 10.05 acre parcel in this zone district, would be allowed as part of the CUP. And it would also, the equestrian facility would also include riding lessons and horse camps. The riding lessons would occur 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays in the afternoons, and it would be limited to 5 riders. And the horse camps would occur for a total of 6 weeks out of the year. It's 4 weeks during the month of July, 1 week during spring vacation, and 1 week during the winter. The horse camps would be limited to a maximum of 15 riders. Staff is recommending some additional language to be added to the project description in order to clarify the maximum number of horses that owners would be allowed to bring in for riding lessons and horse camps. And that would be that the maximum number would be limited to 5 horses for riding lessons and 15 for horse camps. No noise amplifiers or lighting is proposed, and water would continue to be provided by the existing on-site water well. Access would continue to be provided from Edison Street, and no grading is proposed for the project. Just minimal ground disturbance is necessary for installation of the ag employee dwelling and the 2 barns. The proposed 800 square foot storage barn, as I mentioned, would used to store hay, and it would be located on the southeast portion of the site, which is here. And here's a photo of the elevation of the proposed hay barn. The proposed 931 square foot horse barn would be located along the southern property line, and it's adjacent to the existing paddocks, as shown here. And this is the proposed elevation. The horse barn has 4 stalls. And then this is the location for the ag employee dwelling, is shown here, and the elevation of that. A mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project, and it was circulated for a 30-day public review and comment period from September 29th of this year to October 28th of this year. Mitigation measures which have been included as conditions of approval for the project include requirements for compatible building materials and lighting restrictions, implementation of the animal waste management plan, dust control measures, and a standard discovery clause for cultural resources, as well as construction hour limitations. The MND concludes that with the incorporation of these measures, impacts from the project would be less than significant. The proposed project is consistent with the Santa Barbara County Comprehensive Plan, including the San Ynez Valley Community Plan. Adequate public and private services are in place to serve the project in conformance with Land Use Development Policy 4. And the project is consistent with agricultural element policies which protect and enhance and promote agricultural land uses in the county. The proposed project is also consistent with the Ag 110 zone district requirements, including height limits and setbacks. Equestrian facilities are permitted in the Ag 110 zone with a CUP, and the project is also consistent with the LUDC requirements for agricultural employee dwellings. In conclusion, staff recommends that your commission make the required findings for approval of the project, including CEQA findings, adopt the mitigated negative declaration, including the mitigation monitoring program contained in the conditions of approval, and approve the project subject to the conditions included as Attachment B. That concludes staff presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Edie. Other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Brown.
Good morning, Ms. Edie. A question for you on the horse camps. So because I don't really know much about sort of horse camps and how they occur and what happens. So it is possible that the maximum number of participants could bring their own horses, and they come in there towing their own horse trailers, and it's, I don't know, I guess it's, where on the site would those be accommodated? Is there been a plan for that, or I didn't see any information specifically about that, or was that?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Brown, there is ample areas on the site for parking, specifically the back pasture area, and there's actually a second access point there where horse trailers could easily come into the site and park, and it would easily accommodate 15 trailers
Do you
there.
have on one of the
Yes,
maps you could show
I
us?
do. So if you see on this aerial photo, there's actually
Oh, I
a
see.
secondary road here, and
I
then
see.
this is a flat area here, so trailers could park there, and then the riders could bring their horses down
Okay.
here to the arena and then to the barn area to
Okay.
work with them there.
And then they would go out through the,
Yes, they'd go back out here to the road and
Oh,
go back
okay.
down.
all right, thank you.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Edie, I was noticing in the setting, in the description, they mention, it's mentioned that a mobile home park is located to the west of the, I did not see that when I made my site visit. Do you have a sketch of that or a picture of that? If it's there, it must be very small or well hidden, because I didn't see that. If we don't have a picture, at least maybe you could describe the size of that or how many units are in there. Oh, here it is. Okay. So it's quite small.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Brooks, yes, it's small. It's here access off of Highway 154. You can see it right to the northwest, off the northwest corner of the property.
Okay. I looked over as I was leaving the property and then going back on the 154, and I could not see it, so it must be well screened. Okay, thank you. That's one of my questions. When I was at this site, I noticed the residential second unit, which is permitted. Is that one unit or two units? There seemed to be two entries, so I don't know if that was, considered a front entry, back entry, or is it just one? Housing
Mr.
one family.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Brooks, it's for one family. Yes.
I had another question, and, maybe it'll be answered when we hear, from the applicant. Right now with, if during the camp time, that the only bathroom facility would be at the private home, which is really at the far end of the property. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Brooks, yes, applicants are required to provide permanent restroom facilities, and so there is existing restroom within the main residence that people boarding their horses, as well as people taking riding lessons and that are there during the camps would have the opportunity to use. And I did consult with Environmental Health Services, and they did review it and approved the use of the existing septic system for the additional participants associated with the equestrian facility.
Okay, but perhaps as I was looking at the property, my concern there was, especially if you're going to have younger children there for lessons, I didn't see what the access would be for, is there a path on the property? Let's say if the children are at the ring for training and then they have to go over to the home, so that they would not have to go back out on the private road, is my concern.
Yes,
Is
Mr.
that-
Chair and Commissioner Brooks, if you can see over here, this is the main entrance to the site, and cars would park here. And then right here, this is a walkway. And you can walk all the way down here, and then actually there's a walkway here that goes right to the house.
I walked on that walkway. Okay, I get it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions from Commissioners Freeney or Blau?
No questions.
Ms. Edie, just in terms of the number of animals that we would be permitting, there's a maximum of 21 that would be boarded. They would be there for some period of time. Then if I understand correctly, there could be as many as 15 additional horses brought onto the property for the camp, for a given camp. And how long would those horses at maximum be residing on the property?
Mr. Chair, those the riding camps are limited to 9 a.m. to noon for that 6-week per year period. So those additional 15 horses could be on the property from 9 a.m. to noon for the horse camp, and then would be off the property. So it would be on a temporary basis.
So they'd be trailered in every day and taken off every day. That's the plan.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. Is there any provision, I couldn't find it, but maybe I didn't look well enough, for reporting to the county on the camps and how many people are enrolled, so that we could know without having to go out and investigate in case of neighbor complaints exactly how many horses are there at a given point?
Mr. Chair, the project does have a condition, a project-specific condition it's condition 12, and it's a monitoring report. And the purpose of that report is to ensure that the project description is being abided by the applicant. And this is similar to other equestrian facilities we've recently permitted. And so I believe that would be a method to ensure that the number of horses that are being brought to the property aren't exceeding what's allowed.
And those reports are quarterly?
Yes, the applicant can request to submit them yearly. That is written into that condition, but from the beginning of the approval, it is quarterly.
Okay, so it'd be up to staff as to whether to grant a waiver of the reporting requirement.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you. Anything to add at this point? No? Then let's turn to the applicant. Ms. James?
Oh, this thing needs to be shorter.
Yeah.
It needs to be like the Academy Awards where the thing goes up and down. Could you do that, please? I wish to thank Dana Eady for taking over this project. She has not had it for very long, and I think she's done a masterful job of picking up where Stephanie Swanson left off. And to thank you for guiding it through the process. Dana did a wonderful job of presenting what the project is about. I'm basically here to answer any questions that you might have. The reason we put in the 15 horses could come for the camp and the 5 horses could come for the lessons was not for Mrs. McClellan, because that doesn't happen. She might have 2 or 3 people that bring their horses, but the conditional use permit goes with the land. So if she ever sells it, then the next person has to abide by that. So that was the reason that we added that in, not because Cindy's group, brings in 15 trailers with 15 horses. So that's the only clarification I'd like to make there. Cindy runs a fine facility. As you can tell by the number of letters that you received in your packet, you've heard of horse crazy girls, right? Well, Cindy teaches them about horses, and they find out if they really want to be a part of a horse's life. Some do and some don't. It's an excellent experience. It gets kids out of the house, away from electronics, back to nature. They learn the responsibilities of taking care of an animal that's many, 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 many times bigger than they are. It teaches them respect. And I'm one of Cindy's students. When my husband took up horseback riding when he was 50, and I was almost 60, I decided that, I'd ridden horses as a kid, but I'd better go take some lessons. And I also bought a horse, Gracias. And Cindy loved my horse, and she used my horse when I wasn't riding it for her lessons for her girls. So I have a real passion for this project, and I hope that you see your way to approve it and let Cindy go on her way and add such a wonderful outlet for children in the San Ynez Valley. She is one of very few horseback riding teachers in the valley. We have many trainers, we have very many sophisticated people that own horses in the valley, but not many that help children learn to appreciate these glorious animals. So if you have questions, I'm here to answer them.
Questions of Ms. Jamison? Commissioner Brooks.
Yes, I think I had several questions when I made the site visit, and I
Yes.
think most of those had been answered. Now, when I went home, I reread staff report, the negative deck. I believe there was one photo that I saw that showed, because the conditions of approval include the color of paint for the
Right,
buildings.
right.
And I had seen, I think maybe it was the old barn that was kind of this dark green, but yet
It was kind of dark blue. You mean, are you talking about the storage barn that was there?
Yes.
Well, that will
It's
not be
gone.
the color.
Okay.
That's gone. The previous owners took that.
All right, I didn't see that on my site visit, but then I did look at some of the photographs that were included, and that was in color, and I was hoping that,
No.
you know, the condition of approval, asking for neutral tones,
Right.
you know, would be adhered to, and we won't
You
have
won't
any
even know
dark
it's
green.
there.
Okay, all right, that was one I had. I don't know if maybe we'll talk about it during deliberation. One thing I noticed, you know, everything was in, I would say, you know, impeccable condition, you know, for a horse facility. You know, it was, you know, in very, very good shape, which I was glad to see. I didn't see very many horses there, so, you know, I had the same questions. When the horse trailers come down the private road, and I'm thinking in terms of even keeping that road as well maintained as it is now. It's just a dirt road, but there's no ruts. Has there been any consideration of putting in a speed limit sign, or is that just assume that anyone with a horse trailer, you know, is going, let's say, 15 miles per hour?
I don't think you have the problem with the trucks pulling the horse trailers. They go slowly. It's the cars that sometimes go a little too fast. And Cindy has asked everybody to just, you know, lighten the load on the pedal there and not go so fast, as have the other neighbors too. So, and sometimes it's just the neighbors that are going too fast. So that's, putting up a speed sign, I don't think she would be opposed to it. I don't know that would help. And there is one, I think, that says 5 miles per hour, and
Okay,
nobody goes 5 miles per hour.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Any other questions? Not hearing any, Ms. Jameson, for now at least. Oh, Commissioner Brown.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Ms. Edie indicated there would be a slight change to the project description to indicate the number of, maximum number of horses during the horse camp. You've obviously agreed to that.
Yes.
Okay, and Ms. Edie will show that to us when we get, okay.
And like I said, that's really not for this client.
No, I
This is for
understand.
in the future.
Right, yes,
Right.
thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay,
Anything else?
nothing more.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We have some public speakers. The first is Gail Fisher, and she'll be followed by Sarah Welby. Ms. Fisher, welcome.
Good morning. I'm sorry I don't remember everybody's name. I've never been here before, but I've known Cindy for over 20 years. My daughter rode with her as a teenager. You know how it is. Sometimes it's better for them to learn from somebody else other than their mother, right? Horseback riding has always been an important part of my life growing up in the East. I started riding at age 10. I was in Pony Club. I went to the B level, which is pretty high in the Pony Club world. I rode hunters and jumpers and did combined training and dressage. And so I'm pretty well versed in what goes on there, all the ins and outs and all the hard work. But what can horses do for our kids, for people? Well, there's the respect for life. You're there with a living, breathing thing every day, or whenever mom wants to take you. There's the responsibility that a horse requires. There's also the respect for life. You're in charge of this thing. It really doesn't have control about what it does. There are consequences for your actions, whether they're good or bad. If you ride too hard, if you don't ride enough, you need to maintain this creature that's in your care. And there's the reward of hard work. You work and you train in your school and you bring your animal into condition, and maybe you even get to go to a horse show or some kind of competition and be rewarded for your hard work. There are so many values and life lessons that horses bring that are lacking today. Cindy provides a safe environment for children and teens to develop these lifelong lessons by choosing to ride and care for horses. I don't think she makes a lot of money at this, so it's out of her labor of love that she does this. She teaches them not just how to ride, but how to care for a horse, to anticipate movement, how a horse might think or act or react. She teaches grooming, she teaches parts of the horse, equipment, and care. I see extreme value in what Cindy has chosen to do as her contribution for our community. So much so that I have chosen her and her Little Big Riding School to teach my own grandsons the life lessons with horses. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fisher. Sarah Welby? No?
May I address the board?
Uh,
Am I on the agenda? Oh, you did? Okay.
You're more than welcome to address it. Would you fill out one of these speaker slips if you haven't? They're right back there on the
I understand my name is actually on it.
Oh,
Javier
okay.
Trujillo.
All right. Yes, we're going to get to you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Next, then, we have Hermine Brooks. Good morning.
Good morning. I live at 2029 Edison. It's the 10-acre parcel that is just directly in front of where Cindy's business is. I have absolutely no problem with construction, with the goings and comings of equipment. I am delighted to know that she is proceeding with this, and I have no problem at all.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Trujillo.
Good morning. Thank you all. I live directly across the street from this proposed project. Cindy's driveway and my driveway look right into each other. I've lived in the valley now for 19 years. I helped start the charter school in the valley. What Cindy's proposing for this area is a benefit for all of us. We need young people in the valley. We need to draw young people in the valley. Our entire valley, our entire county depends on renewal. As we get older, we need young people to come into the valley, want to live in the valley, want to open businesses in the valley, want to spend their money in the valley, and want to live in the valley. What Cindy is proposing is absolutely great for that. Since Cindy has bought that property, the life of all of us neighbors has improved. I believe that if the board were not to approve this, it really would be detrimental to the quality of our life as neighbors in that area and for the valley in general. So I strongly recommend that you approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Are there any in the north?
No speakers in the north.
Okay. Then I'd just ask Ms. Jameson if you had any final remarks that you wanted to make. No? Okay. We'll bring it back then to staff. And anything further from Ms. Edie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to go ahead and read in the additional language to be added to the project description that we prepared. Attachment B has the project description, and the second paragraph of that, at the very end, the very last sentence, we would like to add the additional language that states the maximum number of horses brought into the facility for riding lessons and horse camps would be limited to 5 and 15 respectively.
That's it?
That's it.
It's not very lawyer-like, but it makes the point very succinctly. Thank you. Okay. Then it comes to the commission, and it's in the 3rd District. Commissioner Brooks?
Yes, thank you. I have to say, when I made my site visit, I was very impressed, with the facility. The corrals, the barns, everything was in very good condition. And I think that Ms. McClellan is a very responsible landowner, and I think I am very pleased as I go through the conditions of approval that I think they're covering, most of the concerns, that maybe I would have. Obviously, from reading the letters and hearing the testimony of her immediate neighbors, that's wonderful, that she has the support of most of the neighbors. I did read the letter from the one neighbor where, there were some concerns, but again, during my site visit, I felt that the applicant had addressed those issues. Staff had addressed those issues in the conditions of approval. I'm hoping, we'll get the support, from my fellow commissioners. One thing I do want to stress, though, on special condition number 12, I think before, and I think Commissioner Cooney, you brought up, the possibility of a future waiver. I am very comfortable, with this special condition, the quarterly review, perhaps at a future time, the applicant could apply for having less frequent. My concern with that is because of the nature of the children, the age of the camp participants. I think it would be very important to keep this in place for as long as possible. If things change, I just felt very comfortable having that condition. And the thought of, maybe a future time when, maybe everything's going along very smoothly, there would be the possibility of, having some kind of a waiver. I would just feel better about approving the project knowing that this ongoing monitoring would occur. And again, it's more for, maybe the safety, make sure everything is just on the up and up, since it is a, it'll be a commercial business at that point. But my questions about the accessibility of the bathrooms, that has been answered. I think with the conditions of approval, we have the animal waste management plan. And I think Ms. McClellan is an expert on these, as she was explaining to me during my site visit. She knows, how to keep the place up to snuff, and the waste management plan that's being required is very important. There's also an emergency preparedness plan that's required, and again, because this is a camp where there would be young people participating, I think, that is going to make it easier for me, to go ahead and approve. The lighting plan was a concern with the neighbors, and I think that's been addressed very well. We know the Night Skies people over in San Ynez Valley are, very interested in maintaining those night skies, and I think that's important too to the applicant, as we did discuss. So I'm ready to move to approve after I hear from my fellow commissioners.
Commissioner Brooks. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you. Just one question based upon Commissioner Brooks's comments about the monitoring report. It's up to staff to change that filing period. But it doesn't indicate the frequency. Is it ever the case that they just say, no, you don't need to have any, or you could just do it once yearly? maximum length of time between reports?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Brown, the condition says that after 6 months, the applicant can request to do it on a less frequent basis, and it's at the discretion of staff and based on whether we've received any additional complaints. I think probably 1 year would be, every year would be what would be appropriate in this case.
Okay, so is that what normally happens with most of these projects? It's
Yes.
just on a yearly basis? Okay, great, thank you.
Commissioner Ferrini, Commissioner Blau, any comments?
Yeah, I think it's a good project. As was stated, we'd be supporting the applicant's labor of love, so I'm all for it.
Not sure if you can
And I
hear
would-
us up there, but we've lost the connection, so stand by, we'll
Can you hear me now?
get you back.
Okay, when you get us back, let me know. Oh, get your red button, the big one. No, no, that one. There you go. Can you hear me now?
No,
No?
We have you back.
that one turns me on.
Can you
You have
hear
us
us up there,
I can
Doc?
hear, we can hear you, yes.
Okay, you're back on, so Commissioner Freeney, you were
Okay,
just
great.
starting. I hope you didn't go too much further.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say I support the project and support the applicant's labor of love, as was said, and I look forward to see her having a successful equestrian school.
And I'll concur with that comment. I will make one comment, though, that I don't understand the reporting issue, if you want to know the truth. So the applicant's going to write you a letter every quarter saying, we're in compliance. I don't get that. I don't understand why she's having to take the time to write a letter that says she's in compliance. It seems to me if she's non-compliant, someone will complain, and then you can go out and do your investigation, and she's got to live with the project description and the conditions of approval. I just don't get it. So I'm not going to fight the issue. I just don't understand why you would have someone do that. You set the rules for her to operate under, and obviously you could revoke the CUP if she doesn't comply, but it seems silly for me to write a letter that says, yes, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. How is that monitoring the situation? Just a comment.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Blau. Let me start my comments with that particular issue. I don't envision the applicant writing a letter to staff and it going into a round file or the file, but some sort of reporting form that addresses the main issues required for compliance that the applicant would work out with staff and would be easily completed and filed so that we have an ongoing record, at least at the beginning, of compliance that is available in case there is a neighborhood complaint. I think we hear a lot about the development of the San Ynez Valley with commercial or commercial-like operations side by side with residential uses, and it has the potential for conflict. And what we're trying to do, I think, is head that off. At least I see that in staff's condition 12, and it's more a question of how we implement it. Commissioner Blau's point is well taken. We don't want to just make work for the applicant, but we want something that gives us solid evidence of compliance that we can utilize going forward. And when that repeats, there aren't any complaints, and we're able to say with comfort that an annual report is sufficient. I think that is fine being left in the discretion of staff. It shouldn't come back to the commission for a waiver. So glad to have the condition and look forward to a limited period of quarterly reports. Otherwise, I do feel this this applicant has made an exceptional effort not only to bring the existing operation into compliance, but to anticipate future use of the property so that the entire benefit, as Mr. Trujillo said, to the valley can be realized. And I agree with him. I think the more we can do for young people in terms of activities, the better. It's great that young women have the opportunity to raise horses and to enjoy riding them. I know not too many young men are interested, but maybe become so as they get older. And certainly horseback riding has a long history in our valley and in the country, and anything we can do to encourage its continuation is positive. So I will be supporting the motion. Commissioner Brooks, when you make it. Are you ready?
Yes, and I will make the motion, follow staff recommendation. We can make the required findings for approval, adopt the mitigated negative declaration, approve the project, subject to the conditions in Attachment B, and that includes the change in the project description as described by staff in this hearing. That's my motion.
And I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion before we move to a vote? Commissioner Brooks?
Just one element of the proposal, the idea of the ag employee dwelling. I mean, I feel this is a very legitimate project, and this part of it, I think Ms. McClellan is going to be needing plenty of assistance if she's having a very active camp, during these weeks in July, and then also during the school holidays. And I see this as we talk about ag employee dwellings, and this seems to be a very legitimate part of the project. Thank you.
Okay. We're ready. Mr. Villalobos.
Commissioner Brown. Aye. Commissioner Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Farini.
Aye.
Commissioner Blau.
Aye.
And Chair Cooney.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming down and sharing your opinions with us. We value it very highly. Ms. Black, do we have any other business?
Apparently not. No. So we'll see you next week in Santa Maria.
All right. Thank you
Great.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Meeting adjourned.